It's Christmas Day of 1734 in the town of Leipzig, Germany. Everyone is at church, of course. They're there to hear the story of Christ coming into the world and to celebrate in word and song. And when I say celebrate, I mean they'll be at it for a while. A sermon in those days, just the sermon, was usually an hour long. After the sermon, it was time for the choir. Their contribution often lasted between 20 minutes and half an hour and was accompanied by an orchestra. Sound familiar? Sounds a lot like our own word-sung tradition here at SPC. And in fact, that is where we come in. Because this particular choral celebration is our next installment of the Word Sung. Because on Christmas Day in Leipzig, Germany, in 1734, was premiered Johann Sebastian Bach's Christmas Oratorio, Part 1. Oh, did I mention that their music director was a fellow named Bach? If you went to church at one of the two main churches in Leipzig in those years, you got treated to the equivalent of a word sung every single week. It was part of a church service that usually lasted about 3 hours. And every single week, the choir would sing a composition by its own director, J.S. Bach. This time, Bach really went into high gear, because Christmas Day in Leipzig was only the beginning. They also had church the second day of Christmas, the third day of Christmas, New Year's Day, the second day of the New Year, and Epiphany. That's 6 times in 2 weeks. And Bach provided an entire choral cantata for each one of those, 6 in all. We're just going to do the first part for now. Imagine writing all of that music, a cantata every week with a quill pen, then rehearsing it with your singers and instrumentalists, then performing it on Sunday, not to mention all those extra services. Of course, Bach may have cheated a little. In the autumn of 1734, 3 things happened. The Elector of Saxony, the ruler of Bach's part of the world, just happened to visit. His 11-year-old son had a birthday, and his 34-year-old wife also had a birthday. Bach wrote cantatas for each of those secular occasions and used them as part of celebrations at the university in Leipzig. And then he recycled the music. So if the opening chorus with its trumpets and drums sounds like the pomp and splendor you'd associate with a big cheese like the Elector of Saxony, that might be because that was what it was originally for. Only now, instead of celebrating an earthly king, it is in celebration for a heavenly king. The timeline for all this music was so tight that there are some musicologists who think Bach may have had this in mind all along. He worked with his poet, a guy named Picander, who supplied the words and told him to write a second set of words so they could use the music a second time at Christmas and in church. Not that that didn't raise a few eyebrows, I'm sure. There have always been people who want to make sure that church music doesn't sound anything like music outside the church. In fact, when Bach arrived in Leipzig in 1723, he was elected unanimously to be the next director of music, but one member of a search committee said he should refrain from making his music too theatrical. Seems as though Bach ignored that advice. Bach had a habit of going his own way, and he led a pretty interesting life. Before we get to the music, permit me a little detour to just skim some of the more interesting episodes in the life of Bach. True or false?
True or false?
Bach had 15 children.
False.
That is correct. How many children did he actually have?
9.
12.
I'll say 6.
A little higher.
9.
I know he had a lot.
12.
You want to revise your guess up a little bit?
19?
Oh, you're so close. Keep going.
12.
Keep going.
13.
He had 20 children.
No.
Impossible.
That's a surprise.
Yeah, with 2 wives.
Oh, okay.
Not at the same time.
Okay.
True or false? Bach, while young, almost got into a duel with a bassoon player.
Yes, true.
That has to be true.
It is true. What makes you think it's true?
I don't know. Bassoonists, I think, can have an attitude.
He insulted the bassoonist. Do you know what he called him?
I can't
He called him a zippofagotist.
Okay.
which apparently translates to something like nanny goat bassoon player.
Okay. Well, I'd be insulted too. So.
Yeah, well, and so they were walking past each other, and the bassoonist drew his dagger, and Bach drew his dagger, and they were getting ready to fight, and then somebody broke him up.
Drag him up.
Pro tip, never insult a bassoon player. Bach once complained that there were not enough funerals in Leipzig because he needed the extra money for his family of 22. True or false?
I'll say true.
I would believe that's true.
That is true. Probably not the kindest thing he ever said.
No.
True or false? J.S. Bach once wrote a cantata about the joys of coffee.
True.
True.
It is true.
I figured it had to be.
The joys of coffee.
The joys of coffee.
I'll say true again.
It is true. Do you like coffee?
I do.
Well, then he's your man.
I love coffee.
Oh,
So it would only make sense that he would compose music in its honor.
so this would be your piece of music then?
Oh, for sure.
Awesome.
Schmeckt der Kaffee süßer, lebendiger als 1000 Güsse, wieder aus Muscaten Wein. Wie schmeckt der Kaffee? Wie
Are you a coffee lover?
No, I drink tea.
True or false? Bach once got in trouble for sneaking out during a church service, during the sermon, to go visit a wine shop.
False. He would never miss a sermon.
You're right. His choir director, on the other hand, did sneak out.
True.
That one's false. His choir director got in trouble for sneaking out during the sermon to visit a wine shop.
That was close.
Yeah. We know this because we have the records of a meeting to which he was called, the minutes. The man said he was very sorry and he would not do it again.
Okay, sounds like something somebody could do during a sermon.
Could you imagine?
No.
Well,
but
the sermons were an hour long in those days, so
Okay,
there was
understandable
time to,
have a little drink, yes.
yeah, nip out and have a quick one. I don't think our sermons are long enough. True or false? J.S. Bach once walked 250 miles to hear the great organist Dietrich Buxtehude play.
True.
It is true.
Yeah.
Have you ever walked 250 miles to hear anybody in concert?
One time I did it for you.
Oh,
I was really far away and I had to make it back for church because it was you playing. So yeah.
250 miles?
No, I've never walked that far.
Oh, okay.
Ever.
Wow. False.
Actually, he did it.
Better man than I am. That's right.
Yeah, I have never walked 250 miles to hear anybody play anything. He got in trouble with the church authorities for overstaying his leave. He was supposed to stay for 1 month. He stayed for 4 months. I think we have something in the employee handbook about that situation. Bach got in trouble for something else when he returned from that trip. Evidently picking up on Buxtehude's way of playing hymns, Bach began to insert improvisatory interludes between each phrase of a hymn. The congregation didn't know when to come in for the next line. They held a meeting at which they told Bach to knock it off. Actually, let's stick a pin in that. We'll come back to it later. For now, let's get into the music. Bach begins with a massive opening chorus. The full orchestra, the full choir, all sing with trumpets and drums blazing. The longest section of the oratorio is right at the beginning. Christmas starts with a bang in Leipzig. Then the tenor, playing the part of the evangelist, begins to tell us the Christmas story. Now, as we are learning from the sermon theme this fall at SBC, each of the gospel writers has their own unique way of telling the story. Bach borrows most of his version from Luke, the journey to Bethlehem to register for taxes, no room at the inn, Jesus born in a manger, with a few bits of Matthew thrown in, such as an emphasis on Jesus being of the line of David, Israel's great king. The story is told mainly from these short sections when the soloists declaim or recite to the accompaniment of organ and cello. These sections alternate with songs for the soloist to help us reflect on the gift of God's Son, as well as a few short hymns, which we will all sing together. We'll be singing the whole thing in English, even though Bach wrote it in German, because his congregation spoke German and ours doesn't. I think in this case it is the intention or the spirit of the composition that determines our approach, rather than literally adhering to the way Bach did it without thinking about why. Now, I mentioned 4 different kinds of music: choruses, or music for full choir, recited or storytelling sections, songs for soloists, and hymns. Bach can also weave those together. For instance, at one point, the children's choir will sing with the adult choir. They'll sing what to Bach's congregation was a well-known hymn. We sometimes use the tune at Pentecost, but here it is married to a text about Christ's descent to earth. Between each phrase of the hymn, however, our bass soloist interjects with those recited or recitative passages to underline how we ought to respond to such a gift. 2 of the parts of our offering are hymns, and I'd like to approach them that way, which means you'll be singing with us. Now, the bad news is that these hymns aren't all that familiar, but they are short and easy to learn. After all, they were designed for a congregation of regular 18th century Germans to be able to sing without going to rehearsal. The choir is going to sing them for you now, and you can sing along to learn the music. For the second of these hymns, there's a catch. The catch is that Bach has inserted a small section with trumpets and drums between each phrase of the hymn. Didn't he learn from that episode with the people of his church in Arnstadt? Apparently not. But the effect of this is that it is a glorious way to end the first part of the Christmas Oratorio. Let's hear the full version with trumpet and drum interludes, this time played on the organ. That's the rundown. Bringing it to life will be you, our children, our amazing choir, and our excellent soloists. I got a chance to sit down with them recently to talk about Christmas Oratorio. Well, I'm here with 4 very special people at SPC. They are the soloist section leaders of the choir. They have been, in some cases, providing their excellent voices and lending their leadership to the choir for years, if not decades. And yet, many of you may not know them. So before we get started, I would like to be able to put personalities behind the faces and just ask all of you to introduce yourselves. Tell us when you arrived and what brought you here. So who's been here the longest?
I have.
Ray?
Yeah.
What year did you get here?
2001.
2001.
Yeah.
That was a while ago.
It certainly
do you
was.
remember anything about it?
I remember getting a speeding ticket on the way home on 65 because I was in a hurry to get back to where I needed to be at work. And so at Pittsburgh Opera, I was working there at the time.
Wow.
And I came up here for the audition and buzzed back there.
See, this is the kind of great story that I didn't know, because all 4 of these soloists were here when I got here. So Craig was here to audition all of you. Anna, I assume you are next?
Yes, I came in the fall of 2002.
2002. And do you remember anything about your audition? Or how you were you scouted?
Oh, I remember in my audition it was really kind of fun because first of all, I don't think I've been more nervous for any audition having sung around the world. This was like, I'm really scared about this audition. And when I had an opportunity to sit in front of the Music and Worship Committee, they asked me questions, a lot of questions, and one of them was, what do you like to sing when you're not singing classical music? Like, I have no idea. I just, couldn't come up with anything. So, but it was, I felt very, I was like sitting in a throne and on the altar, and
I think we were all subjected to that.
Did we all do that? It was.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it was very interesting. But Craig also had a very challenging audition process. Sight reading music, his favorite piece of music that was a very challenging piece to sight read.
You mean he didn't just bring you in? I have this idea. He was touring down the freeway one day and he heard your voice on the radio. And he said, we've got to have that woman in our choir.
Actually, no. I was living here. I had gotten married fairly recently in 1999, and I was going to the library. I went to the library a lot, and I spoke with one of the volunteers at the library, and she was here at this church. And I grew up at the church at St. Stephen's, and that's where my love of music became very powerful, and why I went into classical music, because of the music I sang there. Another B composer, Brahms, instead of Bach, but I was speaking to Judy, and she said, I mentioned I would love to sing at the Presbyterian Church, because it's a place that has a great reputation, and we do the classical sacred music, which most places were not delving into that anymore. And I heard about Craig Dobbins, and I knew that Marianne Cornetti had sung here, and Kevin Glavin had sung here, and there were some really amazing soloists. And if I could get into that, I would be very excited. So I was called when I heard that there were auditions, and I jumped at the opportunity.
And were you working at QED at the time?
I had started there, yes. I started in 2000.
Anna is also the voice of Western Pennsylvania's classical radio station, usually in the afternoon, sometimes in the mornings. And will often do exactly what I'm doing now, which is interview local artists. People come in from all over to promote their concerts. All of their artistic happenings, and of course, in addition to that, besides being a host, you also sing in a number of those concerts.
Right. So Pittsburgh has been very good to me, and I grew up in Swickley, swore I'd never come back, and here I am. So met a guy on a blind date and was married a year later.
There it goes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shiru, I believe you would be next. In fact, we just celebrated your 15th anniversary. We just had a cake a few weeks ago, so 2009, I think, right?
Yes.
Do you remember the audition?
So I'm really old. So when Anna talking about all those details, I'm thinking, what was my case? I don't remember.
Yeah.
What did I sing? What the audition case? What time? And when I really, maybe too much going on with the other things. I don't remember. I only remember someone told me because I was quitting Shadyside Presbyterian Church. So I think it's Patricia, somebody told me, said, hey, Swickley Presbyterian Church, just looking for somebody.
Were you teaching at Duquesne at the time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also
I really don't remember much of the details.
Duquesne has a wonderful sacred music program.
True.
One of the big three colleges downtown. I noticed when I moved here in 2016, they all seem to have their own particular emphasis, so that all three schools, that UPitt and CMU and Duquesne, are also close together, that they are not directly competing with each other. Speaking of CMU, we have a graduate student recently enrolled, Paul Yater, who was in a completely different part of life when he came here a few years ago, and has now entered the master's program.
Yes.
So you auditioned in, would it have been 2021?
2021, yes, it was July. My predecessor, Colin Farley, had posted in a forum that the Mendelssohn Choir has for its internal members that his position was going to be opening up. He wanted to start a family, and so I was sitting at the church job that I currently had at the time with a Catholic church, and remember thinking, oh, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could, make that move. And I waited 5 days, and I was at the next mass the following Sunday, and I said, you know what, I'm going to message him and see if it's still available, because I thought by that time somebody would have snatched this job up. It's, as Anna mentioned, its reputation preceded itself. But luckily, Colin got back to me, said, no, please come audition. Here's Craig's information, and the rest, as they say, is history.
And here we all are now. So let's talk about the music. It opens with a massive chorus, trumpets and drums and flutes and oboes, oh my, and lots of strings for about 7.5 minutes. Lots of high notes from the sopranos and all those glorious things. And then we come to an end, and the tenor jumps up and begins to recite a very well-known story. This is, I believe, the first time you've sung the Evangelist?
It is. I've watched several other evangelists, but this is my first time getting to proclaim the word in this
and
role.
In English.
And in English,
Which
yes.
Has its own special challenge, I would imagine.
Yes, especially as I try to get the syllabification under control with the recits.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I mean, one of the challenges I think of recitative or recited music is the rhythm. That you're basically, this is the part. I think flourished particularly in the Baroque era, where the singer gets up and we're going to tell some of the story, and then there's a couple of chords, plunk, plunk, and then it's time for more story, and there's usually some kind of a crazy tritone at the end, and then we finish, plunk, plunk, right? And then it's time for your grand solo aria. Only you don't have a grand solo aria. What happened? What was Bach thinking?
He was spreading the wealth. He was spreading the wealth, I think.
We have this odd thing. We go straight from your recitative straight to Shuru's recitative, and suddenly the atmosphere changes, and it becomes very serene, and in come the oboes. And we were practicing this the other day, and it just did wonderful things to my pulse. It just slowed everything down. And you continue, Shuru, to where Paul left off, and then you actually get to sing a full-blooded aria. So what's that like?
It's quite long. I'm thinking, go back again. There's A section, B section, there's another 2 little sections, and especially with the word yearning, burning, all those arts.
Yeah, we should mention, because we're singing this in English, it has its challenges, and one of the challenges, I think, is that you really can't hide not only your diction, but some of the poetry. Bach's poet is a fellow named Picander, and he doesn't have a particularly good name among musicologists. He's often thought of as a third-rate poet. Poor guy. This is not peculiar to him. I think Mozart's librettist and some other folks that worked with great composers came into the same censure, Oh, why did, they have to write such glorious music and send it to such bad poetry? And this is one of the things that they are always getting on poor Picander for, is because he liked to rhyme everything. And some of his rhymes are a little cheesy, like you just said, yearning, burning, turning. It almost sounds like Cole Porter there for a minute.
Maybe in German it's different, that feel, because we're singing in English.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you can hide it a little bit. The other thing that we noticed in the middle of your aria is you have some very long phrases.
Right.
How do you breathe?
And the running also. So you really have to control your voice with a quick running, especially the tempo you suggest. So, and also there's even you breathe, it's just quick lift. You have no time to really breathe, holding 3 bars of one long note. And but I have to say, very vocally comfortable Bach, right? This piece for the alto, for the mezzo,
But
at my age, I still feel really comfortable singing.
Good. Yeah, it is a challenge though.
It is challenging.
I think Bach was an organist, and I think about Stravinsky, his quote that says about the organ, "The monster never breathes," he said. Because you can really just set your car keys on an organ key and go to lunch and come back and it's still there. So you don't have those breath control issues.
Right.
But you all have to deal with that, and thank you. Then we have a chorale or a Lutheran hymn. So all of us get a chance to get up and sing a short section. Would have been a very familiar hymn in Bach's church, maybe not so much for ours. And then Ray gets up, and guess what? It's another recitative. Only yours is really unusual. What's going on there?
Well, the children are singing with me, and
you have some 20 children with you.
Yeah,
I think, which is amazing. I have to say, first of all, hats off to Jeremy Fisher, who is the children's choir director, and Aaron Leghorn and Nicole Kalaka for wrangling the kids. We rehearsed on Sunday, and they all came. 20, some of them. One of our guests was amazed at how many children there were. And then there they all were, and you sang alternatum with them, right? Because we thought, we've got to have, first of all, any artist, it doesn't matter who, you want to be in the space you're going to sing, if you can, and you want to be under the conditions you're going to be under, and then to have their singing a hymn, right? And then you come in with just a short recitative, and we thought, as soon as this big baritone voice comes in, we don't want the kids to just be standing there like turkeys in the rain, going, "Whoa, what's going on?" And so they did marvelously.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. Yeah, the text is mostly about the kindliness of Jesus, and it's a very sort of interesting combination of those two things, to have the recitative and the children singing this long, slow hymn.
And then you get to sing an aria. So I have to ask you, you're singing accompanied once again by a trumpet. So what is it with you and trumpets?
Yeah, the trumpet shall sound.
That's right. And on Easter you sang, and now here we are with the trumpet again.
Yeah, I think we match well.
Yeah.
Trumpets, yeah.
Who wins?
I think the orchestra ends up winning. Yeah. Because I go along, but they keep going after I'm finished for a while.
Yeah.
And there's a really good sort of play off of me with the syncopated lines, and that's a nice, sort of a Baroque thing that happens.
Yeah. So Anna, Bach seems to have committed an oversight and left out the soprano. I don't know what to say about that, except that Bach married an alto. Mozart married a soprano, and Bach married an alto, and this maybe explains the course of musical history. In the past, you have sung the last section of the Mozart Coronation Mass, which is the first thing that we did when I got here, the Agnus Dei for soprano and orchestra, and then a year later we did the Fauré Requiem, and again, Agnus Dei. What is it about the text, Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world, have mercy on us, that makes the composer decide, oh, I need a soprano?
Well, maybe God knows that the soprano needs all the help she can get.
Remission for sins.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Anna will be adorning us with her voice during the rest of the Christmas season, including a special piece that I've written for her the week afterwards sung. It's a surprise to you as we're taping this, but you won't. You're going to get that very soon, and it'll just be a surprise for everybody else. We won't make you sight read it. This is not your audition.
Well, you know, it's interesting because Bach is very challenging for singers. I don't. Shuru, you were saying that the piece really fits your voice nicely, and I know Ray, when you sing, it's great, and then the Evangelista is such a wonderful thing for the tenor to sing. Singing Bach for a soprano is challenging because you don't get to breathe. It's like being an instrument. And I have sung some Bach, and I'm okay with not having to sing Bach for this. I mean, I'll miss it, but it's always fun to sing with an orchestra, especially in this beautiful, beautiful church.
And still leading the choir and helping with the section and all of the sopranos that will be singing along with us.
Right.
And the 25 high A's in the opening chorus that we have counted out.
It seems like so many more than that.
Well, the trumpet will help with that.
Yeah. And yet there would only be 13 if he didn't go back and do them all over again.
Right.
And then we close with another hymn with trumpets and drums and all of that good stuff, and everybody is up on their feet singing, and it's a glorious way to close.
Is the congregation going to sing with us?
The congregation is going to sing with us. They're not getting off that easily.
Okay.
Yeah. My thanks to Anna Singer, soprano, Shiru Liu, alto, Paul Yater, tenor, and Ray Blackwell, bass, for not only their participation in this interview, but for their excellent vocal contributions to our services each and every Sunday here at SPC, and for something else, their professionalism, their leadership, and their ability to guide the many hard-working, dedicated, and talented members of our choir with suggestions and observations gleaned from many years of lessons, coachings, and performances. And thanks to you for watching. I hope to see you Sunday as we celebrate the coming of the Heavenly King.